So they'll think what they think.
Every note I
You all right?
good. Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Board Accountability Committee meeting. I am so excited about some of the things that we're going to talk about, so much so that some of the leadership team and I were having a conversation about how we can pull data that we're already collecting and look at it with qualitative information that we collect, like our survey data, to see what the main contributors are to some of the challenges that we're trying to examine now, like, for example, attendance. And so, Dr. Watts, I'll bend your ear with more of that later. We just had a scintillating conversation about how we could use multiple regression or stepwise regression or principal components analysis to try and look at clouds of information. So you can tell I really, really love this meeting and the power that it gives the district to make good decisions. And so I'm thankful that everyone is here. So with that, I will open up for comments from our superintendent.
I share your enthusiasm about this meeting. It is a meeting deeply rooted in data, but more importantly, also about solutions and how we address that data. So it is a wonderful time for us to be together as we continue to look for ways around and towards continuous improvement. Today, we will have, well, we got to do some other agenda items before we commence. However, I'm excited to give you an update on our strategic plan.
Excellent. Thank you. So we have an agenda before us. Do we have a quorum? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. We do. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Is there a second? You're going to second. All right. Anything that need to be added or changed? All right, seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. All right, great, thanks. Okay, now the minutes for the meeting, you've received those. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the March 26th meeting. Ms. Hall's looking at you. It's been properly moved and second. Any changes needed for the minutes? All right, hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right, cool. So we have done those things, and now we're going to have a presentation on the KPI dashboard, the technical guide, and the reporting matrix, and then after that, we're going to have the presentation on the comprehensive strategic plan.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
And thank you for having us back to talk more about the strategic plan and the KPI reporting dashboard. Since the last time that I was here with you in March, we have made a number of updates to the KPI reporting dashboard. And that is thanks to some hard work on the part of our extended cabinet and their supporting teams throughout the month of April, as we work to ensure that we have very thoroughly operationally defined our KPIs and set our targets in accordance with the historical and year-to-date information that we have thus far. So since I was here in March, what we have done is added the remaining 2 strategic priorities to the reporting dashboard. So previously, we saw strategic priorities 1 and 4. Today, we have added 2 and 3. We have updated the targets. Remember, in our last discussion, we talked about how we had basically some placeholder targets in place that were using the standard Georgia Department of Education target setting formula, and we felt like those were not quite ambitious enough. And so we went back and made sure that we reviewed our data carefully and set some more ambitious targets. In a few cases, we had to update some of the reporting criteria in a way that affected the historical data that we had pulled. So you may see a few of the data points from Strategic Priority 1 in particular have changed just a little bit because we have been working on refining our reporting criteria. And then we are very excited to say that we have some links within the dashboard to our KPI technical reporting guide. And so with that said, I'm going to skip ahead within the dashboard demonstration to Strategic Priority 2. This is where we have the new content added. And so within Strategic Priority 2, Objective A, for broadening the reach and impact of communication to the district's diverse group of stakeholders, you can see that we have added the historical and baseline data for number of visits to the district website, and we have set our targets based on what we think is realistic but also ambitious relative to increasing the number of visits over the next 2 years. You can see there's quite a lot of data that's marked coming soon here, and that is because we have established 2024 as the baseline year. We don't necessarily have historical data to go back and collect for those. However, we do know that by the end of the school year, we will have formal numbers on the number of media documents translated, as well as the number of active PowerSchool parent access accounts, as well as within Objective B, where we are looking at our positive perceptions on climate surveys. We will have data for our students and parents that is generated from the state surveys that are completed in the winter of each year. They typically release the data for those in the summer, so we expect to have that over the summer. And then we will be using some local survey data to capture our staff perceptions, which will also be available shortly after the end of school. So we will have that baseline and target data by no later, we think, than August of 2024. Same thing for our number of community volunteers, whereas in Objective C, for advance and assess effective partnership opportunities to support student success, we're actually looking at establishing that baseline in the upcoming school year, 24-25. And we know that, of course, in the past, we have traditionally collected information about who our business partners are and maybe how many we have, but within this KPI, there has really been a focus on partnerships that directly support student learning and provide some very unique experiences for our students. And so we are looking at ways to make sure that we are assessing that direct student impact when we are measuring the partnerships and the opportunities. I mentioned that we do have links now embedded within the dashboard, so anywhere you see the question mark on a dashboard page, if you click on it, it will take you to our technical reporting guide that shows more detailed information about what these KPIs really mean, how we're measuring them, how we came up with those targets. And so, for example, here with Strategic Priority 2, you can see for each page we have the KPI, we have the reporting information, we provide information about what type of model we use to set the targets. We are providing information about exactly what the expected improvement is. We have the report dates, and then if we think there's additional information that might be helpful to a stakeholder who's looking at this guide, we're providing links to additional information in the final column. So for example, with number of visits to the district website, our first KPI on this page, you can see that within reporting information, we are saying that this reflects the number of visits to the district's website as of April 8th of each year. And we chose April 8th because of that being the transition date from our old website to our new website for this current year. So that's why that cutoff was set then. The target model is that we are looking for an annual increase of at least 7% over the baseline. Now, our baseline was about 1.1 million visits. So when we apply that 7% increase, that means that we are looking for an additional 79,000 visits in each of the next 2 years for a total gain of about 158,000. And then we plan to report this measure as a superintendent's note in June of each year. Okay. I'm going to skip down into Objective B and looking at our number of community volunteers. Because this gives us an example. We have all of the same information, right? We have our reporting information that tells us that we are looking at volunteers, at the number of approved volunteers that are registered within the VISTA platform as of the end of the school year. We're looking for an annual increase of at least 150 each year, and you'll notice that the expected improvement for that measure is kind of color-coded in yellow, and the baseline is to be determined. As we saw, remember on the dashboard page, we had that marked as coming soon because we know we'll be collecting that as of the end of the school year. But because of the fact that we had some data to date up through about mid-April to work from, we felt comfortable with going ahead, setting those targets based on the year-to-date data, and then as soon as we have the final complete year-end data, we will plug in the baseline.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Can we go back to the previous slide? I want to just restate what I think you said from a 30,000-foot view, and that is basically for all of these key performance indicators, which KPIs are, we are basically using 2024 as our baseline for everything that we're measuring as our measure of progress under our strategic plan, with the exception of student engagement and learning experiences, and that baseline is going to be set for 2025.
That's correct. And so we made a deliberate effort to use 2024 whenever possible, but there are a few instances in which we've had to set it at 2025.
Okay, and we're choosing 2024 because we think that's the newest normal of the new normal?
That is one consideration. The other consideration is that 2024, with Dr. Watts coming in July at the beginning of this school year, and engaging in the work of the Listen and Learn report, and then turning around and funneling everything that was learned into the development of this new strategic plan, that really school year 2024 would be a more appropriate baseline year than, say, 2023.
Okay, so it aligns leadership with practices. Everything we know by using 2024 is going to be aligned with actions that you implemented. So it's a very, very clean interpretation of leadership effectiveness. Okay, thank you. And then Vista kind of snuck in there. So we changed our volunteer program. That's a new revision. Can we just tell, because I don't know if the public is familiar with Vista. I know we had a previous identity to our volunteer training. Can we just tell people what Vista is?
So that is a great opportunity. Actually, I'm going to go right back into the reporting guide because we have the link here and additional information. So if you click the link on more information about volunteering in SCC PSS, it will tell you, hopefully when it loads, it will tell you that VISTA stands for Volunteers in Schools Targeting Achievement. And of course, this is the platform that we use to capture our volunteer applications and go through, have it go through the approval process to have approved volunteers. But all of the information about how someone would register within the VISTA application for volunteering is here.
Is there anything different about the screening requirements? Because that's what people would probably ask.
There's no change to the screening requirements for volunteers. It's still governed by the same policy component. The Vista name that you're seeing was rebranded about a year ago, and we've been using it in various public documents and discussions. Part of the challenge previously is it was the name Operation Beacon, which worked. But Beacon, we found, was being used for a lot of stuff. And
Okay.
folks were getting confused with a beacon. There's a publication, actually, that was being done in the community that was not us. And there was some confusion about that in our program. So we thought that this was a little bit better. And then it's more robust that you're seeing now as well in the engagement with the launch of the website, which is also nice because you've got, under some of the goals that we're seeing here, some cross-functionality, wherein more users and clicks to the website is going to be driven in part by folks who need to see this as well. So we do have this listed here, but all the components as far as a volunteer registering through the system and then having a background check and screening, and the way we define them as direct engagement or indirect engagement are all the same. And
Okay.
the training requirements for mandatory reporter for volunteers is all the same. It's just a new name.
Okay, that's helpful. I missed that altogether. I missed the renaming, but I think it's great. Ms. Hall?
Let me ask you if this sentence I say is true. The more stakeholders we have involved positively with the schools, and the more volunteers we have engaged with our students and their achievement, the better our chances are going to be that our students are reading proficiently and doing well in numeracy by grade 3. Is that true?
I think we know what the research says, right, about having parents and a community who are very engaged in supporting students with their academic learning. There's definitely a positive relationship between those things. And this is sort of similar to what I said, like with the business partners, right? We are focusing less on just saying, let's look at this total count, whatever it is. And we are focusing more on saying, we really want our volunteers, we really want our partners focused and engaged in the work of supporting student learning.
Can I add just a little bit more context? I think
Yeah,
you did a
'cause-
great job, Christy. It's not necessarily quantity, it's quality, and it's targeted quality. So what we're also trying to avoid is many partners, and I'm extremely thankful for all the partners that come to the table and want to help, but if that's not coordinated and targeted, it becomes a burden for the school to have to organize all of the people coming in, and it's also a distraction for the student because maybe they're not in class because they're engaged with so many different individuals. So I think VISTA is a really great name because it includes the word targeted, and it's about figuring out what the right combination of partners are and how they actually target toward the student deficit or the needs of that particular student. So I think it's less about quantity and more about strategy and alignment, if that makes sense.
Okay. And with our stakeholders, too. We have a broad audience of stakeholders.
And that's
When we say
awesome.
positively engaged, that correlates in some targeted way to our kids doing better academically.
That's what we're trying to define
Yeah.
and measure.
Yeah. So that we're out in the public saying the right things that make sense. And this isn't seen as some popularity contest that we want everybody to know about the schools, but it's not affecting the kids' achievement at all. So however we can easily and briefly describe that best is good.
I think Mr. Smith, did you?
I had one question I wanted to ask. Thank you for this presentation so far. I wanted to ask, I understand why we're not applying research or data from before Dr. Watts came in. My question to follow up on that is there research or data collected from before?
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, you'll see some of it reflected in the dashboard because while we are setting 2024 as our official baseline, we did have to look at some data from school year 2023 in order just to have a sense of where we were on some of these newer measures. So,
I was
yes,
going to say that,
definitely.
it would be nice to see before the pandemic, during the pandemic, after the pandemic, and as the ball gets carried on with Dr. Watts, just for, good comprehension of what's going on, if that makes sense, historical value. So just lifting that up to you all.
All right, if we don't have any more questions on strategic priority 2, we also have new additions in the dashboard that cover strategic priority 3, which is our strategic priority that deals with talent management for optimal employee performance. And so under Objective A, where our focus is on recruitment, retention, and recognizing our workforce, we have added the data on number of teacher vacancies. We know that by the start of next school year, we will have data for us to plug in here on our employee perceptions of being valued or appreciated. And then for retention of effective employees, this is one where we did have to push that baseline out to school year 2025. And the reason for that is because we are really focusing on the effective employees part of this KPI. And there are some changes coming to the employee evaluations that will affect how this KPI is measured. And so we need school year 2025 to work through all of those processes and get that data. For strategic priority 3, objective B, we have a section here entitled Perceptions of Professional Support. These are our KPIs that focus on teachers, school leaders, school staff, and non-school-based staff's perceptions of professional support. And I want to make sure that I'm very clear about what that entails. This is where we are looking at results from a local survey that is really designed to assess the extent to which principals, supervisors, colleagues, and district staff are supporting basically comprehensively throughout the district, right? If you're a teacher, you're answering questions about how supported you feel by your colleagues and your principal, and district staff who are there to support schools. And we're carrying that throughout all of the employee categories to make sure that we have proper levels of support, since that is one of the things that was very clearly brought out in the Listen and Learn report. Underneath that, we have our measures of professional development. And I know, like, the first time I saw professional support, that's kind of where my mind wanted to go initially. But the measures of professional development are the more focused on our number of professional development offerings for all staff, our number of participants in those professional development offerings, and the perceptions of the value of that professional development. And so for those, that will also be an area where our baseline is established in school year 2025. And again, because it is, while certainly we have had professional development for a number of years, with the focus having been very much on teachers and school-based staff more so than maybe other employees, we are really looking at making sure that all employees are covered by these offerings and opportunities. And so that is why you see that measure pushed out with a 2025 baseline. And then for strategic priority 3's objective C, which is about, which includes our KPIs on employee well-being and morale to create a positive working and learning environment. We have measures of teacher and staff satisfaction. These are, again, measures that will come from our local surveys and that we will have the results coming in over the summer. So we will have the baseline data for that before the start of the next school year.
Question on the, previous slide for the professional development. within the KPIs, so it's the number of developments, and then I see it's the number of participants. One of the things that we've also heard is concerns of adding more programs without taking something else off. So I wouldn't want to see this artificially, like we're offering more programs and so our KPI goes up, but in fact, it's having the opposite effect on our teachers and staff because it's one more thing they have to do.
So I think that was part of the intentionality of including positive perceptions of value. Because while in previous versions of our strategic plan, we have had measures that are centered around number of offerings,
Right.
right? We did get that feedback in some cases from teachers who said, you're adding more and more to our plate and we're feeling overwhelmed. And so that was very much the thought behind the positive perceptions of value, because we want to make sure that if we are offering professional development, that our teachers or any staff member who participates feels that that offering was of value to them in being able to perform their job effectively.
Well, and I think that's great to add that positive perception. I just wonder if keeping the number in there, like if it could, anyways, that's, you hear my point. And then the other question I have is, well, two, we heard how happy the staff and teachers were when Dr. Watts declared the meeting-free work week or whatever it was. So are there any like KPIs about just kind of overall protected time?
So we do have some survey items. I know you've heard me mention that end-of-year local survey a number of times throughout these two strategic priorities. There actually are at least, I believe, 2 items within that survey that address planning time and preservation of instructional time.
Okay. and
There's
then-
also a specific strategy. I know we're not looking at strategies right now, but there's a specific strategy around planning time and having work-life balance.
Great, okay. And then final question, then I'll stop. We have this teacher burnout report that has been completed. Has that been, do some of the recommendations feed into this as well? Perfect, okay.
Yes, that was definitely a consideration when we were having our discussions on strategies that tie to these KPIs. Yes.
I think it's really important that we communicate that back to the teachers as we go through this, to be able to say, we are listening and this is how. So I would hate for that to get lost in translation along the way.
To continue to say, all of these things were informed by third-party reports, My Listen and Learn, the board, the community. It's been a myriad of different things that have informed us about where we are. But you're right, we need to preface that so people don't think we're just pulling things out of the sky.
I didn't think about it until looking at this and hearing this discussion, but what seems to be missing is the part that measures optimal employee performance. So how do we measure that someone is exemplary at what they do? And I don't know if that's the percentage of individuals having superlative reviews in TICAS or LECAS, but I like all of these measurements about talent management, I like all these measurements about talent management, and I think the thing about individual achievement is missing. If we look at professional development, number of offerings, okay, was professional development available? Yes or no? That number of participants, did I want to do it? Yes or no? Did I think it was worthwhile? Perceptions of value, yes or no? None of that is getting to me performing optimally.
Go back a slide.
It's how I feel about, and did I stay? Yeah, maybe. Do I feel valued? Yeah, maybe. Did I leave? Is there a vacancy? But did I perform better for all these investments? Where's that measurement?
It's on this slide, retention of effective employees.
It's not the same as growth. Did I not leave? I'm a good employee, so I stayed? That's retention. Am I a better employee because I went through these things? Did I get a better evaluation this year
That's the
than I did
question that
last
we're
year?
answering with this one. It is looking at the evaluations of our employees and the employees that rate proficient and above in their performance would be the one that we would be measuring here. Now, what I'm hearing you say, I think, you have to help me with interpretation, is you want it somehow correlated to the professional development?
I think that is one measure. So measuring how many people who are rated effectively stay.
Who went to professional, the professional development had an impact on their performance? Or is it just their performance, whether they went to professional development or not?
When the number that says number of participants and positive perceptions, to me, that's did you go and did you like it? And that's an evaluation of the professional development.
By itself, right?
By itself.
Right.
Here, you're telling me retention of effective employees, that's the number of employees that make our bar. This is the bar of good.
Yes.
The number of individuals who are at good or better.
Yes.
The number of those who stayed, signed another contract and stayed this year.
Yes.
To me, that's different than it's different than student growth. The number of people who were below the bar and got over the
I got
bar.
it. I got what you're
That's what I'm
saying.
trying to figure out. Because we don't want people who need development to just leave. We want them to stay and get better. You know, that's what I'm wondering. How would we measure? We're missing an opportunity to measure that. Like, I have a performance evaluation each year,
And I actually improved.
and I improve. That's what I'm wondering. Is there an opportunity to measure that?
That could certainly easily be a leading KPI.
Okay.
With the lagging KPI saying this is the percentage of
Who stayed.
effective employees. But internally, obviously, we certainly want to monitor the growth of our employees because not every employee will be exceptional. But we want to provide those PD opportunities to obtain that level of skill set and knowledge they need to perform it at high levels. That's an internal measure that we can have, that we
Okay.
can monitor. It wouldn't be a public-facing measure.
Okay. And I'm okay with that. I just think we use it, although we don't recognize that we have schools where there are exceptional leaders, and we say these individuals are good at growing their talent at that school, or they're moving the numbers forward in that school, where they're moving it forward because the team there is getting better. Okay. Thank you. Mrs. Hall.
I wonder if we're using our principals and their expertise of their buildings in these, in this data gathering enough. Because that person has his or her eye on that teacher who maybe the perception through the school was, who I hope I don't get Miss Hall because she's so mean. But they see over the course of the year, oh, Miss Hall is standing at her door in the morning and she's smiling at her kids coming in and she's hearing parents say, ooh, I hope my child gets in Miss Hall's class next year. Those kinds of qualitative things that show growth.
Yes.
I'm not sure if we can really capture all that, but I do think principals are key people who can see.
Yes, absolutely. So know that the employee evaluation is done by the principal.
That's true.
And the
Okay.
principal should be looking at the total body of knowledge that they observe in a teacher and that they see in student data. So I do think there is space for what you're talking about and looking at all the
Expository, where
value.
they
Right.
can expound on those
Yes,
things.
but
that-
I will say, we have a lot of work to do in this area because we are not calibrated across the district. So a proficient in one school for a teacher may be a different proficient in another school. And then when teachers transfer and they were great over here, and then all of a sudden they get over here and the principal is not looking at all of those other things, that is where you then start getting into culture issues.
Yeah.
And so we have a new evaluation tool that will be rolling out, I believe, year after next for teachers. We will have a new district office evaluation tool for directors and above starting next year. And a big part of our plan is to calibrate everyone so that when we say something is good, everybody agrees that good is good, great is great, and not good is not good. But right now, I would say that's probably not the case. And so we have a false sense of effectiveness right now in the district.
I think that's a really good point. Any more comments on, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, just
Mr.
to add to
Feliciano.
Ms. Hall's comment, looking at the teacher, at the principal to teacher, in objective B, you see the opportunity there for the teacher to respond on, are they receiving the support services they need to be successful in the work that they do? So it's two ways that we're capturing information so that we can analyze it and see areas of focus that we need to do, the target.
Thank you. Please continue.
Thank you all. And that actually concludes our review of the KPI reporting dashboard. However, I do want to spend a little bit more time on the reporting guide. I know we talked about how you can access that reporting guide from the pages of the dashboard. However, make it do what I want to. There will also be a way for someone who maybe didn't go in through the dashboard but just has some questions about what's included in our strategic plan KPIs and how they're measured. We will have a way to access it outside of the dashboard as well. We do want to have it set up as you see here so that clicking on any objective under a strategic priority would take you into the page of the technical guide or reporting guide that deals with that. I also want to call your attention to the fact that I know you received an advance copy of the reporting and technical guide on Friday as part of the Board Accountability Committee packets. However, we had an extended cabinet meeting on Monday that involved some of our work around making sure that we have the reporting criteria exactly the way we want it, that we have things scheduled exactly where we need them to be. So we did make a few changes in this reporting guide since you received it on Friday. Most of that is just some refinements to the reporting information. We made a few minor adjustments to wording to try to improve clarity. We specified within the teacher retention, the teacher vacancies KPI, that we would be looking at that as of November 1st of each year. So some things about setting those reporting parameters. The most substantive changes that occurred based on our discussions on Monday were within strategic priority 4. Specifically within objective A, we made an adjustment to the way that the management action plan on-time completion indicator is being measured. And whereas we initially thought that we would be able to set the 2024 baseline for that set of information, based on what occurred when the management action plan was reviewed in the April internal audit committee, it became clear that we actually probably needed to change that reporting criteria to be able to more accurately parse out the progress that was being made when perhaps an action included multiple departments doing things. And there also seems to be a need perhaps for some coaching and development in terms of considerations you need to make when you're setting your timelines for completing management actions, making sure that those are reasonable and take into account the feedback from the teams that would actually be implementing those actions. And so you'll see that that has shifted now to a measure that will have a baseline established in school year 2025 as we engage in that work. And then on Friday, the version of the reporting guide that you received had a slightly different school year 2026 target for deferred maintenance. But once our team went back and looked at the eSPLOST project plans, they determined that we would need to make that adjustment for school year 2026. And so that is what you see reflected here. They also asked that we please update the report timing for the deferred maintenance report. Initially, we had said it would be done in November, and they have asked that we complete that in March instead.
March, because this becomes active, so All right, so pushing it forward 4 months.
Pushing it forward, correct.
It may be helpful to put the year after these months, because we know that, sorry. It may be helpful to put the year after these months, because we know we're talking about after August. But other people who are not thinking academic year may not know that March means March 26 instead of November 25.
Okay.
Does that make
so
sense?
It does. These will be annual reports. So,
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
we can make them, I guess we can make it specific to the year.
You don't have to. I mean, I was just, that might be more difficult than it's work. Normally, we are approving something in October, so as soon as it comes out, it has
Right.
that dashboard in the front, and we always know it's that year. If this is going to be, I guess this is not going to be evergreen, because the baselines are there, so is this document supposed to be evergreen?
It is intended that way, and actually, we also have a different view of our reporting schedule. So this one is tied to the KPIs, and you're sort of seeing each KPI and the reporting schedule.
Okay.
We also have a reporting schedule that sort of gives you that
Okay.
academic year at a glance. So I think maybe with it starting in July and ending in June may help reinforce the notion that this is based on an academic school year.
Okay, I may be thinking more too linearly, so that's fine. Thank you.
But that was a great segue into covering our reporting schedule.
That's
so.
what I do. Okay.
So again, with this particular version of the reporting schedule, the intent was to make it easy to see for sort of at a glance within the course of an academic year, which key performance indicators were going to be reported in which months. We've got them classified out by which strategic priority they belong with. We are making sure that we provide what type of report to expect, whether that's a board presentation or a superintendent's note or a committee report. And then we did add the note that, of course, the reporting schedule we've developed is based on our timelines for receiving data sort of in a typical year. But sometimes things happen. Maybe sometimes things are a little delayed from Georgia Department of Education for one reason or another. Or, we have something like a hurricane come through. And so, if there are extenuating circumstances, we may have to make some adjustments to this schedule, but this is basically what we can expect.
Mr. Rhodes?
I have a question back for the strategic priority 2 for the number of active Power School parents. For far as the goal, I know that's coming in August 2024. But if we don't meet that goal, what are some solutions that we can do to encourage the participation? Because it's very important, because that's how we are able to keep up with our kids to see what they're doing in their progress. And so for someone that's not doing that, what are some of the, I would say, what's some of the solutions to encourage more participation with that?
So as you noted, we will have our baseline for school year 2024 coming out soon. We actually already know, based on year-to-date data, that we're probably looking at somewhere just under 60% of students having a parent with an active account. And so within the strategic plan, basically for each objective, we have a number of strategies already specified that will try to help move the needles on these indicators. We are also, even below that strategy level, we have very specific tactics that our teams are working on. We are still, honestly, very much in the process of identifying all of the tactics that will feed into those strategies. But I know that we have already talked in our last extended cabinet meeting, about some of the ways that our divisions can collaborate to support one another on these indicators. And so there were some discussions about, for instance, our media campaigns with our communications team can certainly help drive parents actively engaging with this tool. I'm trying to think, I know I saw something else that was specifically related to that, but basically, yes, we are looking at some very on-the-ground tactics that would support that indicator as well as really all of the indicators in the plan.
Dr. Hutchins-Brown, can I say something to Todd? Mr. Rhodes, we have family liaisons at schools, and I've been looking at that to see if there's some way for us to expand their power to address things just like that. Parents who are not really taking advantage or for some reason have not made use of the Power School tool. Because I talk to some parents, and that's their kid's worst nightmare, is that Power School. 'Cause those parents can, I mean, they're on it. So we see what a powerful tool it is. So everything we can do to get that to everybody, would be really, really important. And these committee meetings are so important. I feel sometimes like, though, half of us as board members get all of this, and the ones who aren't able to be here, some kind of way we've got to figure out how all of this information is disseminated. What did you say?
Welcome to her.
Yeah, because now Sunday at the forum, I felt that Denise and myself and Michael, everything that we said coordinated with each other. Nobody said something that the other two board members were, what is she, it all tended to flow like we're on the same team. But I wonder, with this kind of information, how in the world do we need to use informal differently, or how can we?
Mr. Rhodes, and then I'll jump in, and then Ms. Grabowski.
I just want to give my testimony on what was great this year. At Jenkins, they did a ninth grade entry. So any kid that was coming to Jenkins for ninth grade, whether they were in the engineering program or not, they invited them to come to the school. And so they gave a tour of the school. They also a lot of information. And so during those moments like that, I think it would be a great idea if the board members or, Board of Accountability can be present to introduce them to different things and tell the parents about it, because they were very engaged, a lot of information, and they helped out with even me as well, because they were talking about grades. And I coach at Jenkins for football, and so I was letting them know, like, look, it's no summer school for ninth grade. And so do your work, make sure you do your work. If you don't, you're going to be ineligible and you can't play. And so that opened up a lot of people's eyes so they can see. But I was glad to have been there so I could have said that, because most people probably thinking, oh, if he don't do what he's supposed to do, he go to summer school, whatever. It's no summer school for ninth grade. So I was glad to give them that point, to let them know. And so it was a lot of participation that was there. It could have been more, but it was still a lot. And so we could keep encouraging that. And then those moments we can be transparent, letting them know, I think it'll be better for us.
I think that's a really helpful observation, because it shows that sometimes we miss the connectivity of what's happening site-based versus what we think people are consuming at the district level. For example, you had a board member who didn't know the Vista got renamed last year, So, and I try to pay attention, I do try. So if that's happening, it's like what we put out for consumption from our communications, and we have a top-notch communications team. They may think that information is getting distributed, at the end ninth grade orientation, when maybe it's not. So I think, to your point, when I saw the KPI shortcut calendar, I thought, man, if we are distributing this to the board members in July, the board members, our hair is on fire in July because we're trying to improve the budget. So we see it and we don't see it. I was thinking, maybe we ought to redistribute this in January when we distribute the board meetings, because we pay attention then, because we all block our calendar out in January when we have all the board meeting dates, particularly the ones that have been set different than the first Wednesday. So it may be about being strategic about presenting and representing information that we want people to consume, and also thinking through our communications priorities, what do we think people are getting and receiving, but maybe they're not? Maybe the folks who are, I'm one of the parents, I get that email from Power School every morning, and my son's day is affected by what those numbers say in that email. Absolutely. It's freedom or not. It's I'm making you breakfast or you grabbing yourself a Coke. It just depends based on what that email says. So I think that maybe spending a little time doing a flow of the information that we think is getting out, that we need to get out, and creating additional touch points so that even if there's redundance, Dr. Watts has figured out with the board members, she has to use redundance to make sure that we get it.
It's hard. And there are multiple, big topics of discussion. Like, we have this, we have a long-range facilities plan. I just mapped out board engagement for that over the summer today. There are multiple things happening at the same time. I had the privilege of transitioning also a child into this system last summer. And it is important to do that campaign at the beginning of the year. But I will tell you, I struggled to get into Power School. I struggled with the whole password and what that number and the info, I struggled with that. And it wasn't until I finally just went to the school and the counselor sat me down and said, this is how you do it. So for some parents, they get it with the campaign and at the open house. Other parents may need a one-on-one.
Okay.
It is an ongoing, it is when you show up at the main office, maybe to pick your child up early, there is a sign that says, do you have Power School? And here are the 5 steps to do it. And if you can't, somebody can be there to show you on your phone. I think we have to have a multi-pronged strategy. It is important what our communication team does, but I will tell you the most credible information in a district comes from the school. That's who parents look to first for information.
Really good discussion. Oh, I'm sorry, Denise.
So a couple bounced around a little bit, but when we were talking about Power School and progress reports, back in the day when we were in school, we had to get our report cards signed. If you came back to school without a signed report card, that was, and I don't think there's a way to do that through Power School, but has there been any discussion around the reciprocal effort and acknowledgement by the parent of progress reports and report cards? Because to me, and then when we get parents who at the end of the year are like, oh my gosh, I had no idea my child was failing in this class, that, I don't know if there's a way to put that check and balance in place through Power School or some other method. And then back to Ms. Hall's comment about we have these committee meetings and they're always wonderful, robust discussions, and unfortunately not everybody can always be here. I wonder if we need to look at our board agendas. So for example, the upcoming board meeting, do we include a 5-minute high-level synopsis where Dr. Hoskins Brown, as the board chair, says, we had a board accountability meeting, this is what we talked about, and for whatever happens within that time frame. And then I love this, I absolutely love this so much. And maybe again, there's a way on our July board meeting, these are the metrics from our July strategic plan that always keeps it front and center so that we as board members and also the public knows where we are. Because I think the one thing that's challenging about our strategic plan and all the KPIs is they're spread out over the year, so you never get a complete picture, which to me I struggle with. I want an annual report. How do we do this year? But I know that's not really, because of the way the data comes in, it's not really feasible. But those are just a couple of thoughts that I had about how we might be able to keep it more front and center. I know our goals, our agendas are structured by our goals, but even that gets, I think, really lost, so.
Yeah, no, that's a really a good suggestion. We did that at one point. I don't know when we began or when we stopped, but during the board, during the peer-to-peer, often committee chairs would say, we had this meeting and these were the things we talked about. And it would just be like a 90-second thing, we had a good discussion. Our guest speaker was this person. We, said that we pledged that we would pursue such and such later on. I think that's a very easy thing to do it was in announcements. That's where it was. It was in announcements. And it didn't happen all the time.
So it's sort of a sweep through all the committees,
Well, I think because not all the committees meet monthly,
right?
it could be whatever committee met since the last time we met as a board, maybe.
Well,
We'd
most of the committees do meet.
most of them are meeting
Yeah.
monthly.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, we don't.
Well, CIC
CIC
skipped last
does.
month.
Well-
So anyways, we can figure out the logistics around it, but it's just, Dr. Watts, it's bugging me too. It keeps on flying in my face. We need some Zevo in here.
I would be willing to do that as a committee chair, and certainly you can check with the other committee chairs if they would like to have a report out. But yeah, announcements.
Announcements, okay.
Could, I think, is a place that could sit.
All right.
Thank you for that suggestion. I'm going to ask. It's 4:23. I know we are in the reporting guide. And the schedule, is there anything else that we need to cover in this before going to the comprehensive strategic plan?
If there are no more questions, I am happy to turn it over to Dr. May.
Thank you. This has been really, really helpful.
Very helpful.
All right, I just want to quickly go back to Dr. Hoskins, what you said about Evergreen. So for our stakeholders that are out there, they might not understand what you mean by Evergreen. So you were discussing about the reports and when they occur. Evergreen, you meant in perpetuity. Do those consistently every year report on the same time frame that we list them? They're really tied to the life cycle of the strategic plan. So and on top of that, we also come every year back to the board accountability with any adjustments that need to be made based on factors, external factors that may influence our strategic plan and reporting schedule. For example, it could be from the Department of Education at the state level. They may change something, or at the federal level, they may change something. So that then we would come back and make those adjustments yearly as part of our continuous improvement life cycle of our strategic plan.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I have the pleasure of showing you the intended printable version of our comprehensive strategic plan that includes not only the strategic priority and the performance objectives, but it provides a nice side-by-side delineation of our key performance indicators and our strategies, so that everyone, all stakeholders, can see those metrics that we intend to assess throughout the year and see how we are performing in relation to our goals, but also those strategies that we will implement. With regard to strategic priority 1, there were some slight verbiage modifications to a couple of the strategies in which we wanted to highlight the collaboration between district personnel and community stakeholders. So, for example, under Performance Objective A, promoting the development of foundational skills and expanding early learning opportunities, we wanted to clarify the fact that we're establishing a partner network with district personnel and local daycare and early childhood center providers to provide that training for them in early childhood development and school readiness. So we wanted to highlight that collaboration between the district and our families and community partners. So the same thing went for the third strategy, in which we're enhancing district, family, and community resources to support the development of foundational skills. Are there any questions with regard to this presentation or the various contents? Yes, ma'am.
I know Pastor Smith has to leave, and I had told him I was going to not talk long, but this is one quick thing. Our district personnel who are going to be working with our daycare, who might that be? That's academic affairs. Where are those persons located?
Yes, ma'am. So you would largely find those individuals in academic affairs, and I can turn the floor over to Mrs. Ball Oliver to expand on that a little bit more.
So yes, and that would specifically be in the literacy office, but also with our curriculum and instruction. If you remember, last year we engaged some of those personnel. We did a Saturday workshop, at Jenkins High School, and so that work would expand and be more inclusive. So those would be the persons that would actually be providing that. And remember, these are also, some of them could be school academic coaches, as well as teacher leaders who have truly engaged in that training, especially as it relates to letters and being able to support them around the science of reading. One thing we heard from that team when they were on the literacy task force, they actually welcomed that when we made that recommendation that we would be able to support them in that area.
So we might have people stopping by a daycare to observe a daycare class and help a daycare owner with the logistics of that. Or are you talking about just formal things like at a school?
So I think the partnership is envisioned, or was originally envisioned, as we may provide training, support, and then follow up in terms of actually observing and giving you feedback, as long as both parties, the daycare owner and the district, agrees. Of course, it is optional for them because those are their businesses, but that's the way it was envisioned, to provide those workshops and that support, and then definitely can come out and give you feedback or support in other areas if requested.
Well, it's so phenomenal if we can make this work. And if there is some way, Dr. Watts, that we can favor those places that cooperate with us, you know, in some kind of way, designate them as, so this is where a parent would decide for their child to go to daycare, because this daycare is really trying to parallel what we're doing. But this is phenomenal if we can make it work.
And Mrs. Hall, if you'll remember, last year, district personnel, leaders in academic affairs and specialists also provided this kind of training to parents on a Saturday, where parents were welcome to bring their children. They provided them books as well as other resources, and spoke with parents, trained parents on working with young children on phonics, those early literacy components.
If we follow through, and if it's not just this Saturday and then we don't do it for 6 months, but if it's a...
Yes, ma'am. So that is the intent of this strategy, to truly establish a program around providing that kind of training and support. Any other questions with regard to either performance objective A or B?
No? Please continue.
So the same pattern follows. We have performance objectives C and D on the following page, also under strategic priority 1. If there are any questions on those, there were no revisions beyond what had been previously presented on either one of these. So with regard to strategic priority 2, in addressing the question that was posed earlier with regard to PowerSchool, what you will see is a targeted strategy that will address that parent and guardian focus. So the intent here is to create a parent guardian focus campaign to drive the use of parent engagement platforms. And so we intentionally are using the word platforms because we're not limiting that to just PowerSchool. Another opportunity for parents to keep up with the work and the quality of work too that the children are turning into their teachers. Our wonderful students sometimes have assignments too that may be missing. So another opportunity for our parents is to join the parent portal within our learning management system, Brightspace. So with Brightspace Parent Access, you can actually get a snapshot view of your student's performance in a given course. You can see exactly what has been completed, what is outstanding, et cetera. So it goes a little bit beyond those notifications that you get from PowerSchool.
Do we have any kind of short promotion or demonstration of the value of PowerSchool that we share with parents? Because I think what the obstacle for parents who don't choose to use it may be not understanding that you can use it actively. Like I know Dr. Brinkman says he logs in every day and he's touching all parts of it. And there's some that use it passively and use it as a notification tool. And there may be some that would be more inclined, and I went through the same gauntlet as you. I think it took like 3 or 4 times before I was able to successfully register. Yeah, it was not. And so, but once I got in, I was like, I'm not trying to fight with this every day like this, but it is a useful notification tool. And maybe some of the parents that Mr. Rose mentions, like, well, why are they not using it? If they knew that it wasn't going to be a daily fight, that once you got in it, it could provide you really valuable information without a strong investment every day, maybe they would, fight through to use it. So do we have any promotion of Power School?
I do know that at various events, especially those anticipating the start of school, and also as we're wrapping up school, our SIS team definitely is there to promote Power School, has information on Power School. And part of this targeted campaign can focus on different modalities. Perhaps we can create an informative video. I know Power School itself has cute little cartoon-like graphic type videos to promote the use of that. If we can do something that specifically addresses SECPSS parents being able to, we can definitely explore that. Additionally, with regard to that passive, I would call it passive but very powerful way of getting information from Power School. In my own experience, I literally get 12 emails a day with regard to my children. I get them both for their course performance, their grades, but also their attendance. And I get them for every, so it depends, how many little boxes you check. How much information do you want from Power School? If you just want anything that's available, and I find it, that way the parent can hone in on what he or she wants, but they never miss anything because it's always there in your inbox. I find that is particularly useful in really highlighting that and having our SIS team really continue to do what they've been doing very well in terms of driving the Power School enrollment numbers, but also talking about these features and how valuable they are to parents and families.
Before I turn it over to Ms. Grabowski, I think we just had a sidebar that illuminated another potential thing for us to address in our marketing. It's like, I've got one child and I got 4 or 5 emails a day, as does the superintendent. But if you have a larger brood, then that's 1, 2, 3, maybe 10 times the number of emails that you're getting. And so that might be prohibitive for some people, or at least teaching folks how to use the tool. The idea that Power School is so customizable for your consumption that just a little bit of an investment can customize it into giving you what you need and none of what you don't.
I agree, and I think Mr. Rose as well.
This is a little bit different than the Power School, and actually I meant to ask this earlier.
Yes.
So the district website engagement, I agree, is great, but that also is the impetus is on the parent or to visit the website versus information being shared. And I'm thinking in particular of school newsletters. So I think some schools do probably a more robust weekly newsletter than others. Is that considered part of our KPI? Because to Dr. Watts' point, like that's where you really find out what's going on at your particular school. And to me, that is the most valuable piece of information that I receive as a parent is the newsletter that comes from the school itself.
Yes, and I think there's some variability with some maybe doing that weekly versus monthly. I can defer to Mrs. Bolivar and Mr. Hediger because they will be partnering together with regard to that particular strategy.
Yeah, I think that there is a KPI that they're working on. They're creating a rubric.
Okay.
And part of that rubric is how the schools are reaching out to parents, what
Okay.
modalities they're using and the avenues they're using to reach out to parents. Newsletters would be one of them that they could consider
Okay.
as part as reaching out to the families of the school community.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, we're looking at producing a engagement effectiveness rubric, which would flow in as a component of one of our KPIs. So what we're talking about really is a multifaceted approach to engagement because there's a magic mix that works for every individual differently. And one of the things that we've done in the past with this arena is we wanted to make sure that our schools and the things that they were doing to engage families was captured in some way and didn't discount the value of something as simple as a newsletter. I can remember when my son was going through, before he graduated high school arena, there was a s'more newsletter.
Yeah.
It was a simple thing, but it was effective, and it was creative, and it was a communication channel that the school used, and we wanted to capture that was being done. So the rubric is a way to measure multiple communication channels that are used for output and engagement, and our school's doing that. And the more schools that are doing that on a higher level, the higher the rubric number, which gives you a sense from a district-wide perspective on our effectiveness with engagement. Now, when you get into PowerSchool, we've zoned in on that as a specific KPI because we believe that it is reflective of quality engagement for parents, and it has a very valued component of it in the engagement through the school and how you're invested in your education and knowledge of how your child's doing in school and performing and attendance and all of those components. But as we've gone through the drill, we've realized that parents are using an app for it. Some are logging on through the district website for it. Some of them look over the shoulder of their child when their Chromebook is open. So how do we really look at this in a way to capture that type of engagement? Well, you've gone
Make
into
them sign the report card.
Well, yeah, so that's one of them. But what we realize is there's a whole host of tactics that can be used to drive awareness of PowerSchool and to drive the value of it and selling the experience of it and how it benefits your educational engagement with the school and the outcomes for your child. And PowerSchool does offer some turnkey components, but one of the things that is going to be the greatest value for us, and Ms. Hall, you hit on this earlier, the schools have parent and facilitators. Title I schools have parent facilitators. We're getting ready to bolster our engagement side of the house in communications. Parent engagement is going to be a key focus area. This individual will be able to galvanize and move forward with a strategic approach with focused areas. One of the focused areas is training on how to use PowerSchool. So it's not just so much, hey, it's great, here's why you should use it, but it's how you use it to make that easier and bridge that gap. That's done by boots on the ground, people in the schools, face-to-face engagement, and that's on the engagement side of the house for communications. There's a great value in a lot of connective tissue in what we're talking about here. What we're excited that we feel like the KPIs do capture a reflective piece of all of this.
Thank you. We have more discussion on priority 2, or are we?
The only thing I would like to add is I would really love to highlight Brightspace being an additional tool that is very easy to use. We are working on fully integrating Canva in it as well to allow schools to have the ability to create their newsletters and send them out via the LMS. Brightspace is very easy, drag and drop, very simple to use. You can literally just click your parent group and send out the email with 2 clicks. So it's a wonderful resource that can provide that additional outreach that is needed.
That's great, thank you. And making Canva available would be terrific. It's a really nice tool.
Any questions or thoughts on Objective C under Strategic Priority 2? Then moving on to 3. So here the focus is on employees. There have not been any additional adjustments to the strategies listed under this strategic priority area. Any questions with regard to either performance objective A or B?
I think we went through this pretty thoroughly at the beginning of the meeting. Is there anything anyone missed? Oh, okay. All right. I think we're comfortable going forward with priority 4 then.
Perfect. So in strategic priority 4, very much as Mrs. Rylander discussed earlier, the adjustments were made under performance objective A, where we wanted to be able to accurately quantify the work that is being done to address audits that are conducted internally, so that KPI was adjusted to reflect the average percentage of management action plan items that have been completed on time per the audit and as measured by the summary of audits. And in that context, a strategy was developed to correspond to that KPI, and that is to enhance the timely completion of management's actions to uphold continuous improvement for effective management of resources, assets, and programs within the district. So we're being very intentional in ensuring that we have that strategy aligned to the KPI. No additional adjustments were made to performance objective B. So if there are no questions, then as we move to C and D, there were no updates made to performance objective C. However, as indicated earlier, with regard to performance objective D on transportation and nutrition, we did highlight an additional strategy for transportation, which has to do with increasing the collaboration between our routing staff and our driving staff to ensure continuous route optimization. Everybody understands the importance of on-time bus arrival, whether that be at school or at home, and our transportation team is doing everything they can to enhance their efficiency and effectiveness in this area.
So are you saying this increased two-way communications that the driving staff could say, look, what you've routed doesn't work? Okay.
Yes.
I would have assumed that would have been a value already, but was it not a value, or are we just kind of amplifying that?
I would say
Yes.
Okay.
It's amplifying, and also, to be honest, given all the construction, all the nuances of things that can change throughout the academic year, it's important to reconsider, reevaluate, and communicate that clearly. So if the driver is seeing something in real time consistently for 2 weeks, let's say, then he or she needs to discuss with the routing staff what they're observing and what strategies may be utilized. There's a different and better way of doing things daily, and we want to make sure our kids get to school and home safely and on time.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. So you have heard what our reporting structure is going to be, what our measurements are going to be to determine our success. You've seen how they're lined up with our strategic plan moving forward for 2026, that the baselines are largely 2024, but some being 2025. That really finishes our business, with the exception of saying that we'll meet again the 23rd of July. Our board chair has received the recommendation that brief committee reports at the beginning of school board meetings may be valuable. We've also heard that parents differ. There's a great deal of diversity in what parents are hearing in terms of communications, the ways that they prefer to participate in getting information about how their young people are doing. We've heard that some school board members want to go old school and have report cards signed.
Just accountability.
I fear the enforcement. I'm like, what will the enforcement be of chasing down all these parents? But some board members want to go old school and have signed report cards again. And also.
Paraphrasing.
And also that the partnerships proliferate through this strategic plan. All these things that we say we want to do this, and we're going to measure our success in this way. And one way we're going to do it is through partnerships. One of the partnerships that's been brought forward is the ones with our providers of services for little people, and how there could be real economic benefit for businesses who rise to meet us in early childhood preparation through that partnership effort. So I think it's been a really great conversation between staff and committee members. And if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, moved and second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Awesome. Thanks, everybody, for your service.